Why do empaths tend to over-explain? And unfortunately, it's not a habit that shows confidence or strength. In contrast, it shows weakness. So why is it that the empath does this, and then how do they fix it? Welcome to the Sigma Empath podcast. My name is Vital Germain. I'm author of the book Pink is the Color of Empathy. I'm a life coach specializing on narcissist recovery, empath empowerment, and authentic living. This is my sidekick. Today, later in this podcast, I will reveal the name selected by you, the viewers, the community. Thank you for your input. Thank you. A lot of great answers, a lot of great ideas. So why does the empath tend to over-explain? In understanding the origins of our need to over-explain, that's going to be the foundation on which you can build a platform to stop doing it, because again, unfortunately, it communicates lack of confidence, weakness, which invites people to take advantage of us. And the last thing the empath wants is another reason for people to disrespect us. This is all about establishing a level of respect. So there are two fundamental platforms as to why people over-explain. The first is it's a form of control. By over-explaining, I am attempting to control the narrative, to convince you, to influence your thinking and your decision-making. So I will keep explaining and trying to narrow you down into aligning with what I'm trying to tell you. This is not the strategy of the empath. This is the strategy of a salesperson. This is the strategy of a manipulator. This is the strategy of sometimes the narcissist. But when it comes to the empath, let's ignore the control factor. Empaths tend to not be very controlling. So then it comes down to these other factors, and it really comes down to this one platform: insecurity. Over-explaining comes from a level of insecurity. And as always, please drop your comments. Do you tend to over-explain? And how's that working out for you? Comparing my personal background, I tend to over-explain, and one, it's exhausting. It's frustrating because it doesn't really help the cause. And then I realize that through trying to over-explain, I'm losing a level of conviction and confidence. I look as if I'm aimlessly, helplessly trying to argue my case and getting nowhere. And really, if somebody is empowered, and for example, let's just take the simple word no. When somebody says the word no with confidence, it doesn't need any form of validation. No unto itself is a complete sentence. It doesn't need to be qualified. No. And if it's said firmly with conviction, end of story. No. And what the empath will do is they'll say no, and then they'll go down this long list as to why. Now let's get into the reasons why under the umbrella of insecurity. The first one can start with a level of, it's steeped in our childhood. Potentially as a child, your trauma was you were either never heard, you were ignored, neglected, you always felt unseen, unvalidated, unqualified, and you were desperate to be understood. And by the way, fundamental human need is to be understood. And so in your childhood, let me know if this is something you relate to, by the way. In your childhood, you felt unvalidated, you felt unheard, you understood everybody, but nobody understood you. And so as a child, you either learned two things. You learned to simply be quiet and be invisible, or, which ties into the next thing, it's a form of people-pleasing. In order to people please, and the objective of people pleasing is to be accepted, to be welcomed, to belong, to fit in. And because you felt the need to be accepted by your parents, to be accepted by your siblings, to be accepted by the kids at school, maybe through people pleasing, you wanted to explain every decision that you made so that, oh, they'll understand me and they'll like me and they won't reject me because they'll know where I'm coming from. Maybe they'll have sympathy for me. Maybe they'll have pity for me. And understand why I made this one decision, because I don't want them to alienate me for the decision that I'm making that goes against the grain. And so it's from childhood trauma from parents, childhood trauma based on school experiences. You were often misunderstood, fear of rejection, the need for validation. If you understand the origins of this need to over-explain, now you can start working at fixing this need. This has taken me a long time, by the way, and it's still a work in progress. The other part of why we sometimes over-explain, which has neither to do with insecurity or control, it's we've understood, but it has to do with childhood. As empaths, we easily and quickly understand people's motives, intentions, what they didn't say, what they truly mean. We understand it through the things that they said, through what they didn't say, through their body language, their tone of voice, their facial expressions. We put it all together through their energy. We put it all together and we can quickly understand somebody. Also, because we listen attentively, we listen with empathy, we listen to understand. But that's rarely reciprocated. So potentially as a child, as a teen, even as an adult, you've put the pieces together and you realize that the average adult doesn't care to understand. They don't want to understand. They want to be understood, and it's all about them. And so they don't listen. And you know this, but you're desperate to be understood because your entire life, you've understood everybody, or you've at least put in the energy and the effort to try and understand. And nobody has ever understood you. And part of the reason why they don't understand you, you're neurodivergent, you're different. You process and experience life differently, so you are hard to understand. And so there's this compelling need for you to explain, because you're hoping that they will understand you the way that you understand them. So that's the neutral aspect. There's the insecurity factor. There's the control factor, which does not apply to the empath. And then there's just the simply emotional intelligence. You are aware that the average person doesn't want to understand. And it is completely human to want to be understood. But even the neutral factor still ties into, indirectly, the fear of rejection, the need to be accepted and embraced. Because if I come from a place of confidence and I express my opinion and I live my life authentically, I don't have to validate and explain to anybody. I just do, because this is who I am. And the minute I start to validate and explain my choices, I remove my power. And as a result, people will respect me less. Let me know if any of those aspects relate to you. Have you experienced the childhood trauma where you weren't heard? Do you realize that most adults never put in the time and effort to understand you? Maybe, if you're honest with yourself, maybe you realize, you know what, there are times when I do want to control the narrative because I'm sick and tired of having no control. And sometimes I want to take control and I want to be in charge. And I want people to understand what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling. And so, yes, I do want control, and that's okay. And before we get to the conclusion of this podcast, let's find out the name of my sidekick. Her name, his name, their name. And I've broken it down to the 5, but I'm going to start with an honorable mention. And this was quite funny. It was clever, but it didn't align with my objectives and my platform, and I thought it was very clever. Pandemonium. It's a panda, pandemonium, absolutely love it, but not quite right. At number 5, Dom, short for domino. My logic was black and white domino creating ripple effects. The panda creates ripple effects. The domino effect of the panda's energy. I thought that was also very clever. Number 4 is very cute and very gentle, very soft. It does align with empathy. It was the Care Bear. I thought that was fantastic, but it sounds like, for me, it sounded like a kind of store where you would go in and buy a bear as a sort of a protective, cuddly toy, which is appropriate, but not the platform that I'm trying to promote. Then there was a beautiful one, a Chinese word for triumphant and victorious. Kai, K-A-I. I thought that was also very powerful. Why didn't I go with that one? It's kind of funny, in a joke. My dog's name, I have 2 dogs. One dog's name is Kari with a K. That means king-like in Swahili. My other dog's name is Kibo with a K. That means hope in Japanese. So I would have had these three entities all beginning with K. 3 Ks. Not very appropriate. In at number 2, Chinese for spirit. Po. P-O. That was so close. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. But I went with number 1. Drum roll, please. Number 1. My panda, my sidekick's name is going to be Confucius. Confucius. I love that. It's all about wisdom. There are 5 virtues behind Confucianism that totally align with my platform and with the empath. Number 1, benevolence. 2, righteousness. Propriety, wisdom, and fidelity. Those 5 virtues completely align with my platform, the Sigma Empath. And Confucius, just if those of you who are curious, Confucius is a Chinese philosopher considered the paragon of Chinese sages. The core beliefs include harmony between humans. Love that. Justice, respect for one's elders, and loyalty to one's family and friends. These principles guide personal conduct, social relationships, and governance, reflecting Confucius' vision for a harmonious society. I think that is in complete alignment with my platform, with my messaging. So everybody, say hello to my little friend, Confucius. So after that cute little detour, let's get back to our main talking point and close it out with, how do you now minimize, if not eliminate, your over-explaining? Through your awareness, every time you catch yourself over-explaining, because now you know where it's stemming from, pinch yourself, take a pause, breathe. I don't need to do this. There is no reason for me to over-explain. I am confident in who I am. I own my beautiful empath nature. If they don't understand me, that is their issue. It is not mine. I do not need to be understood to live the life that I was destined to live. That's what you've got to keep reminding yourself. Do not over-explain. Everybody, thank you for your input. Once again, my name is Vital Germain. This was the Sigma Empath podcast rant edition. Please stop over-explaining. Just say what you mean and walk away. If they don't understand you, don't seek acceptance. Stay in your empath power. Be you, own you, with confidence, with dignity, with honor. Everybody, thank you for listening. Stand in your truth.